From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer's spoken to US President-elect Donald Trump, saying they must continue their support for Ukraine. Defence and Foreign Affairs analyst Professor Michael Clark told LBC that Trump could potentially exert a lot of pressure on Putin.
If they annoy him, if it looks as if they're trying to manipulate him, if it looks as if they're turning down what he considers to be a decent deal, then the Americans can toughen sanctions quite a lot. They could send a lot more military aid to Ukraine in a one-off hit. They could turn round diplomatically and say, we will pressure Putin.
The pair also discussed the importance of working together to secure peace in the Middle East. A 20-year-old man's been found guilty of killing a personal trainer and trying to kill her friend in Bournemouth last May. Nazen Sadi from Croydon has been convicted of murdering 34-year-old Amy Gray and attempting to kill Leanne Miles in the same attack. Not guilty pleas have been entered on behalf of the Southport stabbing suspect after he refused to speak in court. Aksa Ridikabana, who's 18, is charged with 3 counts of murder and 10 of attempted murder following the attack in July. And the rate at which prices are rising has increased for a second consecutive month. Inflation increased from 2.3% to 2.6% in November. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed up 4 points at 81.99. The pound buys $1.27 and €1.21. LBC weather, heavy rain across the south tonight and a low of 1 degree. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 3 minutes past 8. Welcome to the last cross question of 2024. It seems incredible that we've reached the last one. We have with us on the panel to my left Dr. Linda Yueh, who's an economist at the University of Oxford. She's written several great books, interviewed about them on my All Talk podcast, haven't I? The latest one, Great Crashes, Lessons from Global Meltdown and How to Prevent Them. To my right, Liz Kershaw, who's a broadcaster. And to her right is Ava Vidal, comedian and journalist. And over to my far left, Fuse ODG, singer, songwriter and rapper. Now, do I call you Fuse, Mr. Fuse? What would you like to be called?
Yeah, you're killing me. Just call me Fuse.
The reason we've got Fuse on the programme is because he hit the headlines recently when he made some comments about do they know it's Christmas? And I think it was with Ed Sheeran. You were sort of educating Mr. Sheeran, weren't you?
Literally educated him.
Very good. We're going to get on, I can tell. And Nick Ferrari's producer, in the newsroom, played one of Fuse's songs called Dangerous Love. Yeah. And I just thought, this is an amazing song. And here it is. But there's just something about that song that has just got a hook, hasn't it?
It's just good energy, good vibes, and it obviously resonates with you because you got that good energy as well. Do you know what I mean?
Sometimes.
It's an alignment.
Not all the time.
Not all the time.
And he's also got a new single out. We'll play you a bit of that a little bit later because it sort of reflects the reason that you're on the Nick Ferrari show. So we would like to have some questions from you. We're not going to indulge in core political debate this evening. It's nearly Christmas. We want to sort of do a little bit of reflection on the year that we've all been through, for good or for ill. The iNewspaper rang me up the other day and they said, would you write a column on what a terrible year you've had? And I thought, oh, thanks. And then I started thinking, I don't think I've had a bad year. And then I started listing all the bad things that have happened.
Yeah.
Maybe I have. So the first question comes from Thomas. It's a text question. Will 2024 be remembered as a good year? Ava, let's start with you.
I don't think so. Sorry to bring doom and gloom. Sorry.
That's what a comedian's supposed to do, of course.
We're always not really. I think with the way, with all the problems in the Middle East and the war and stuff like that, I don't think it'll be remembered as a good year.
Any positives at all? What about personally for you?
I met Fuse.
So this is the highlight of your year.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I've had a pretty good year actually in terms of just family, friends. Just
you've been on this programme at least 3 times.
I have. I know. So that's been fun.
That's all right then.
Yeah. And I actually wrote about Band-Aid as well, and I got the most hate mail that I've got for ages.
Really?
In response to my column, which was pretty much agreeing with Fuse. Yeah.
Well, we will come on to that a little bit later. So, Liz.
Can I just say something about that? Because I think your line was that it was patronising.
Yeah.
And it was...
But we are going to talk about this a bit later.
We are, because I want to say what happened at the time.
Yeah.
My brother was one of the presenters on Live Aid,
Amazing.
and he took Bob Geldof to task at the time, and they've hated each other since.
Oh, really?
And he was... Because, he was very much into African music, my brother. He went all over the world, bringing music to the BBC that would not normally have been played. So he was very, very strong on that. So I'd like to mention that later, because it's like 40 years later.
Yeah.
So 2024, good year, bad year?
It depends who you are, I think. If you are Donald Trump, it's been a roller coaster, hasn't it? From almost being banged up for decades to being the boss of the whole world.
And he was the
potentially
Time
in
Person
January.
of the Year, wasn't he? Which you can understand why they've done that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's difficult to say it's been a bad year for him, given that he's now going to become president again and the most powerful man in the world.
And in that sense, it might not be popular with everybody, but I think it's a good thing as we go into 2025 for various reasons. I think...
Well, actually, the next question is about Donald Trump, so
Okay.
don't say too much more. Fuse is really looking forward to that one. Linda?
I think for... different segments. So I think for incumbent governments, this has not been a good year, because every incumbent government this year...
Apart from in Ireland, bizarrely. They're the only ones they're going to be sticking with what they had before.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. So the loss of voting share by incumbents means that if you're a politician at the beginning of this year and this year where we have had elections in more than half of the world's population, probably not so much, but for those who, of course, were challenging the incumbents, well, it's the other side. But in terms of economics, my area, this year we actually saw inflation dropping to, 2% or so. Right now it's inched up a little bit, but if you compare that to the cost of living crisis that we had, I thought that is an improvement. And then just finally, because, Iain has very kindly talked to me about my books on economic history, I just want to say that because of everything that's been happening, with the Middle East and everything else, it's made me think a lot more about the impact of history and the lessons we can learn. So in 2024, I think we just have to bear in mind, and maybe this is pertinent to the next question as well, is that the golden age of economic growth was in the 50s and 60s at the height of the Cold War. So it is possible to be in this world with all of the things that are happening and still have prosperity.
And the interesting thing is this year, in that given what's been going on in the Middle East, there hasn't been an oil crisis, which if we think back to previous Middle East wars in 73, I mean, that was a major economic crash after that, wasn't there?
Oh, that was the first major shock. That is what ended the golden age of growth from the 1960s. And that is such a good point in terms of history, because when the Israel-Hamas war erupted in October of 2023 last year, that was almost 50 years to the day of the start of the 1973 Yom Kippur War.
Isn't that, though, because half of the Middle East hates the other half of the Middle East? So there's plenty of countries with oil that hate Gaza and Hamas and the Israelis.
But you could translate that into the whole world, couldn't you? I mean, there's all if you look at each different part of the world, there's always going to be one part of the world that hates the other.
But there's not this big cartel like there was in 73, 74, hiking up the oil prices and shutting down supply. Yeah, it's not like that this time, is it? I'm old enough to remember.
I remember the 3-day week, candles.
Homework by candlelight.
Oh, my God. Fuse, 2024, do you think it'll be remembered as a good year?
Okay, first of all, I think if you're listening right now, clap for yourself for making it through 2024, because it was not an easy year. So clap for yourself right now, because it's just tough everywhere. And not just, even, I guess, not just financially, but actually emotionally and, I guess, people's mental health. I spent a lot of time in Ghana, and I came at summertime, and it's just summer was not even the same. People aren't even going out as much. Everyone, I guess this country's always kept people working over the years, ever since I've known the country, but I feel like it's gone worse. Like I spend less time with people that, I usually spend time with. Like families, like my friend.
Do you think that's an overhang from COVID, or do you think it's just the times?
I think definitely post-COVID, things have been a lot tougher. But I guess if you really compare 2024 to 2020, I guess it's better. But it's been a really tough year for everyone. But saying that, at the same time, I mean, the fact that we're all alive, breathing, healthy, even at this table like this, it's a blessing. So, yes, it's been a tough year, but the fact that you're listening to me right now just actually means that you have your health another day to keep pushing and to create a different story for the year that's about to come.
What about the music sector? Because it's constantly evolving, isn't it? And you have to meet all these new technological challenges.
Yes. So the music sector, I feel like, is been hard as well, because artists aren't being artists anymore. They have to be content creators. They have to be everything else. And actually, we're now spending less time creating music. And I don't know if you've noticed, even songs are getting shorter now.
Yeah.
Honestly, I like the 7-minute version.
Exactly. I don't know. Honestly, like, songs are getting shorter now because it's like attention span is not the same. Just artists are now having to be TikTok influencers, rather than just focusing on.
Kate Nash is doing OnlyFans so that she can tour.
No, it's actually
getting a kit off.
I haven't been on it, but
it's actually tough. It's actually tough for creatives right now.
She was speaking about it. And
it's actually tough for creatives right now.
But hasn't all of the, the fact that you would 10, 15 years ago, you would have made a new album, you would have concentrated on that album maybe for a year or maybe 2 years, whereas now there's the pressure to produce more and more and more, but there's more live performances, aren't there? The whole live show seems to be having a bit of a rehabilitation.
It is, and it's not at the same time, because a lot of venues are shutting down too. So this year, probably more venues shut down than any other year over the past 5 years. I know this because obviously I perform.
Did you know that last
week.
November I was 3 nights at the Hammersmith Apollo?
Last November,
3 nights as a supporting act for Cliff Richard.
Wow, what were you doing, dancing?
No, interviewing him.
I like where you're going with it, though.
Are you being affected? Because people are getting quite nostalgic. Like, you see people like The Cure touring again, and they've got like all these older bands and stuff that people want to go out and see. Is that affecting newer artists?
There's a lot that's affecting new artists, to be honest. But I think for me, I'm still kind of. I don't want to be old school about it. I do want to evolve with the times, but I do love a good album. I do love a good, sit down listening to a project. So I've actually just finished my albums coming out in March. So I'm still like, I don't even want to say old school, because old school, I'm talking 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Things have changed so much that 10 years ago is now old school.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There was a joke on Instagram, a father who was getting angry at his son because he was like, "Oh, Dad, you don't know that I know about old school music. Like, I know 50 Cent. He was like, "What are you talking about? Like, 50 Cent?" But when you actually think about it, it's technically 50 Cent's old school. But I'm still of that old school mentality that, projects are still important, some albums finished, but how I'm evolving to what the times are now is I've already created content for 5 songs already.
Wow.
And usually you just make a video to 1 song.
Yeah.
And that's the single, 2 singles, then the album drops. But now it's like you have to create content for each song.
Yeah.
Do you have a record? Are you signed to a record company?
I'm not signed to a record company, but what we do is we're independent and we just pick and choose who we want to partner with.
I think that's the difference, because at one time...
But I've worked with...
Yeah, but you would, rightly or wrongly, and loads of people did get ripped off, you would get talent scouted, signed up to a record company. They would then bankroll you.
Yeah.
And, they might bankroll 2 albums before that one actually broke through and became a massive hit. But they invested money and time in you. And you didn't, they did your marketing. And you just concentrated on the music. The other thing is there's not as much money now. You could release an album then and make a fortune. You can't do it. You've got to be out playing live now, haven't you?
I was interviewing Danny Finkelstein, the Times columnist, earlier for my All Talk podcast. And I think it's one of his sons is into the music industry, and a TikTok video of a song that he had written has just had 3 million. Well, no, it was on TikTok, and then 3 million people listened to it on Spotify.
Amazing.
£5,000. That's
Yeah.
all you get for
It's
3
ridiculous.
million plays on Spotify.
Not
I mean, it's
one of a
unbelievable.
penny.
No, it's really
So
bad.
out of all the songs I've downloaded of yours, you've probably made about 20p out of me.
Listen, I don't even look at the revenue when it comes to streaming. I don't even bother looking at revenues. I'm
It's
like
so
more
depressing.
live stuff or like publishing, you know, radio stuff. Do you know what I mean? I don't even look at streaming anymore. So it's really, really hard for like creatives out here.
The good thing is there are more and more festivals now, aren't there? There used to be like 10 big festivals of the summer, and now there are festivals, small, medium, large, every weekend.
Yeah, true.
And people, like you saying, you know, heritage acts like The Cure or the Buzzcocks.
Bucks Fizz.
Yeah, they can spend the whole summer coining it in, doing live gigs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Radio X with me, Johnny Vaughan. It's 17 minutes past 8.
LBC. Leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
19 minutes past 8 on LBC. We have Dr. Linda Yueh, Liz Kershaw, Ava Vidal and Fuse ODG with us answering your questions. Fuse ODG, where did that come from?
So the Fuse...
Tell me your real name's Trevor, isn't it?
No. Trevor's actually not quite bad, actually. It's worse than that.
Is it?
It's actually worse than that. I don't want to say it. It's actually
Oh,
worse.
go on. What is your...
Okay, so it's Richard.
What's wrong with that?
No.
Richard's a
I
lovely
feel
name.
like Richard
it's
is
a vein
worse
of
than Trevor.
kings.
Trevor's got bass in it.
No, Richard's stuff. Anyway, where did you come up with Fuse ODG?
So Fuse ODG stands for Off the Ground, and that's like a group, a collective from when we were young. We were like producers, artists, entrepreneurs, just different creatives, and we kind of formed this group to kind of, I guess, we used to spend time with each other, then we used to make music together. But we broke up. I kept the name because they're my family, so I kept it as my surname, ODG. And then the Fuse, my cousin gave me Fusion. It was too long, so I cut it short to Fuse.
Excellent. Right, let's go to Kevin in Basingstoke. Kevin, what would you like to ask?
What would be the best way to help young people in the UK and around the world next year?
Really good question. Linda.
It's a great question. So I'm going to, my answer is going to be, there are three things that every human being needs, and we need to give young people agency to achieve those. So one is survival, and in other parts of the world, that is absolutely huge. The second is connection, and the third is status. So connection is about fostering better mental health, the connections that you build socially with your family, community, and the third is status. Status in the sense of, do they have positive experiences, if they're in education, if they're getting training, if they're in work. And so I think it's that holistic view of various parts of a human being that I think if in different parts of it, obviously we support that, whether it's your employer, your school, or really your family, encouraging you to get vocational training, apprenticeship, whatever it is. So to me, I think that would be the way to think about. I'm just trying to alleviate, I think, some of the pressures that we've all heard from the show earlier. It's a very tough time for a lot of people.
And I think there's so many more pressures on young people today than certainly when I was a teenager. And there's part of me that is glad I haven't got children, because I'm not sure I would want to bring them up in today's world because of the pressures that there are. Fuse.
I'm going to be very specific on my answer because I listen to LBC a lot, by the way. I love you, Iain, by the way. I listen to it a lot. But there's not enough black voices on here, so I have to speak for the black children. And for me, my focus actually next year is actually black children, because I feel like there hasn't been enough positive representation or positive examples for them to aspire to be like. So my mission next year is to tell those kind of stories of people who have done amazing things in the past, so these kids can understand the powerful people that have come before them, people that they can aspire to be like, because I feel like the Western media hasn't really given us a great representation of what being African or what being black is like in this country, especially growing up in the UK. A lot of the stuff that I saw about black people or black teens at the time was like us stabbing each other, whenever we came in the news. So I really want that representation to positive representation for our kids to really understand that they can be powerful as well. So what we've done is we've launched an educational app that teaches black history, and it's called School of New Africa. And the idea of this is to highlight the positive contribution of black people and Africans to the world. So for example, we have stories that highlights the fact that, you probably don't know this, African women invented mathematics. And this story, it literally goes back to a place called Eswatini, where they discovered the Lebombo bone. And the Lebombo bone is
it's like a ledger, they think.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
the first
I can feel a new book coming out.
Exactly. And that became the foundation of what we know today as maths.
Yeah.
So these are the kind of stories that we're sharing, so they can understand that when you go out in the real world, you contributed to this.
Yeah.
It's not just about the negative stuff. You actually contribute to the world that we're in today, so you have something better to aspire to. So that's one of the main things that I want to do for young black children in the UK. And not just that, also any parent who want their child to have a diverse view of not just of themselves, but also of Africans and other cultures. And that's really my main mission for next year. And I'm super excited. We just launched, actually. It's been a month since we launched, and parents are really enjoying seeing these stories. And the parents are learning as well, because these are stories that they've never even heard before, because we weren't taught black history in school. When we were taught black history, it literally just went back 400 years. But the stories that we're talking about goes back 40,000 years, before we were taken and enslaved. But school tends to just remind us that we used to be slaves, but it actually goes way further than that. And that's what we're going to do next year. And I'm super excited about
You should have been in touch with us when you launched that, because I would happily have done, well, in fact, I would still happily do a sort of hour on it and get people to phone in.
I love that.
My people talk to your people.
Hey, get in here
in fact, they're talking to each other right now about it. Just out there. Ava.
I would agree. I think that, unfortunately, the prominent black faces we have at the moment, politicians, I don't need to name any of them, who are really arguing out that we don't need diversity, we don't need to be taught this stuff.
Who's arguing that?
Yeah. Kemi.
Really?
Yes, black Tories and black, they're terrible. I saw this thing, and honestly, it looked like divide and conquer, like literally in Parliament, and it was Dawn Butler and some Labour politicians on one side, and Kemi Badenoch and a few Tories, and what's that guy called from Eton, Bim, and they were going, oh no, I don't think there should be any kind of education, so I think it is important, but I think that as our elders are moving on and becoming our ancestors, people like my age now are going to have to step into that. And what our parents' generation did when our sort of peers were put into subnormal, they were labelled subnormal, they actually started Saturday schools. They started to do things and teach kids to bring them up to that level. And I don't think we have the community that we had back then. And somebody has to step in their shoes and sort of do that. I sent my son to 100 Black Men of London, which is an amazing, amazing charity. When I did Celebrity Mastermind, that's who I raised my money for, who do parenting classes.
Celebrity Mastermind?
Oh, yeah. But
did you do better than David Lammy?
I don't know what he did.
Terrible.
yeah.
Was it?
Shocking.
Yeah.
I was good on my chosen subject. Because everyone was like, what's your chosen subject? It's going to be Black History. Is it going to be this? It's going to be that? I was like, no, it's Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Can I just say, I'm on next Friday.
I've always wanted to do that, but I'm not enough of a celebrity.
You should do it.
I can't say what happened.
You should do
can't,
it.
can you? But you can tell us in the break.
I would also feed working class children. Like, it is not. How is it an argument that some children are not eating at school? And I'm actually kind of disgusted the way that children are people, and the way that people talk about kids like they're nuisances. Oh, why should they eat? Why should we feed them? Why should they? The benefit, the two cap, all of those things. Invest in working class children.
Children are like the closest thing to God.
Yes.
They're so pure.
Yes.
And I feel like as adults, we need to all try and be like children. We need to actually stand on tables and be free.
Yeah. Well, when we put your next record on, you'll see Iain doing just that.
You reckon?
Iain loves it. Jumping on tables.
Right, Liz, you'll sit.
Spinning
You
like
don't
a
want
helicopter.
that. Liz.
I think Ava's raised an interesting point, which reminds me of something that I put in my book 10 years ago. I think you can argue with me if you like, but it's an observation. It's not about colour or race, it's about class. And if you get posh Tories, whether they're black or white, then you can have the same divisions. So you're saying you can't relate to people that you've seen in Parliament speaking up, for instance, today.
I didn't say that.
Well, you may not think they represent you, but it's more about class.
Or class.
If Diane Abbott didn't speak the way she does, she wouldn't have got where she is today. I accept that. But it's really tough in this country being working class. Try being a 16-year-old lad leaving a comprehensive school in Wigan or Rochdale with a very poor educational achievement. What's your future? It's really poor. I think what we need to do for all young people is give them hope, praise them, encourage them. We've got a Prime Minister now who every single day, with his immediate team as well, depresses the whole country, running it down, putting us in our place, displaying, as a man, he displays utter contempt for the people that put him there. He was head of the prosecution service, and he's got one big conviction, and that's that he's always right. And
he's not alone among politicians in that,
he's got a very poor attitude. Anyway, it doesn't help when you're running things down. But young people now, they go to university and end up with £50,000 or more debt. We didn't face that. It was all free. I went to Leeds University recently, where I was a student, and the atmosphere was totally different. Students union during the day, empty. Why? Because they're paying now and they go to the lectures. We didn't. We sat round all day. So it's just a
Can't deny it.
And there's a reason. You said about you're glad you don't have children. A lot of young people I know are choosing not to have children because they can't afford it. They can't afford it.
Yeah.
The childcare costs are humongous. Or they feel like the future is so depressing that they don't want to bring a child in. And that's bad because we need children. I don't want to break into Michael Jackson, but we need children to work, to pay for
our
us.
retirement.
Yeah. And
there is one bright spot, though, isn't there? And I'm not sort of trying to sort of grab at things, but I mean, Liz is right to say that sort of particularly white working class boys do have the lowest educational achievement in this country. And you look at the achievement of black teenagers at school over the past 10 years and the attainment level has gone way, way up. Now, that's something...
I mean, commended.
Nobody's going to say that's a bad thing. I don't know why that's happened or how that's happened, but the results show that has happened. So that it's not all bad.
But it's not reflected in the employment figures. Do you know 50% of black graduates haven't got a job?
50%?
50%, yeah. I mean, it's they get hard. It's a harder time to get onto the graduate scheme. It's a harder time, and I think race and class together. I mean, I don't think class cancels out race, but I think
it's
in
not
terms of Liz, I mean, there's both things as well. But people are always talking about how diverse the Tory party is. It's diverse, maybe now with the different faces, but it's not diversity of class. These are all public school kids.
I'm so against discrimination on it. I mean, when I came to London and I got on national radio, it was an aberration to people that somebody with my accent could be on
it still
the
is.
BBC. Yeah,
it still is. No, it's true.
Because if you speak like me, you must be thick, is the assumption, and that's what people have to overcome. So there's a problem with people looking at you and seeing, seeing the colour of your skin. But there's people that you go in a room and immediately people put you in a pecking order subconsciously. And being white, working class from the north is a tough.
But I think it's different when you walk in a room without speaking. There's already a view of how you're gonna, what they think of you, and that's what we're saying about.
Do you really think? Do you really experience that now? Do you really still experience that?
Oh my gosh, 1,000%.
Really? I'm quite shocked.
I feel like it's even worse now. But I mean, you wouldn't. How would you know? Because
no, but I'm just saying. Probably the circles that I've moved in all my working life, I've mixed with people making music. I've probably met a larger percentage of confident, accomplished black people that have never expressed that.
No, they haven't expressed it because
I haven't seen them.
It wouldn't be constructive for them to.
No, but I haven't seen them fail because of it.
I mean, for the fact that they've done surveys in HR, and I sometimes go into companies and do diversity training and stuff, and people, when they're being honest, say, look, and even sometimes it's not intentional, they'll say, I'll look at the CV, I'll see an African name, it's going straight in the bin.
Really?
Yes. It goes straight
and they
into
actually
the
say
bin.
that to you?
Yes, they say it goes into the bin. And sometimes I go, it's only because I didn't want to know how to pronounce it. I was like, you could have just asked them when they got there.
Well, if I took that attitude, I wouldn't have any guests.
Did you know that to this day, black people still put on a white voice on the phone just so they can actually get to the next stage?
Yeah, my grandma used to put a posh voice.
I had a Nigerian friend who would do that.
Yeah. To this day. And it shouldn't be happening, but it's still happening.
I made sure I called my son Nigerian name so everyone knows what they're getting.
We could go on this subject for the rest of the programme, but I do have to go to the news. It's 8:33 on LBC News Headlines with Daryl Jackson.
The Prime Minister has spoken with US President-elect Donald Trump and again called for allies to stand together with Ukraine. In a telephone call, Sir Keir Starmer also highlighted the need for peace and security in the Middle East. The 18-year-old Southport stabbing suspect has denied murdering 3 young girls and attempting to kill 10 others this summer. Not guilty pleas were entered on behalf of Aksa Rudakabana after he refused to speak in court. And Tory leader Kemi Badenoch accused Labour of having played politics with the WASPy women. It's after the Prime Minister refused to pay compensation to those born in the 1950s who lost out because they weren't properly told about changes to the pension age. LBC weather, heavy rain across the south tonight and a low of 1 degree.
LBC. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
8:36 on LBC. We have Dr. Linda Yueh, Liz Kershaw, Ava Vidal and Fuse ODG with us answering your questions. Here's a text question from Salma, who says, Iain, it's great that you've got Fuse on the show. I want to ask, is he right that it's time for the West to stop patronising and essentially recolonising parts of Africa with their brackets well-meaning, close brackets, charity campaigns? Now, just by coincidence, Fuse has got a new single out and it's called We Know It's Christmas.
You told me there's no Christmas in December. Yes, I remember. Stripping me, that's your agenda. But you never told me would end up leaving the place that you sent us. We never surrendered. I wish Mr. Garvey could see this. Malcolm X didn't dream this. Kwame Nkrumah can see this. This feels like 6 March 57, but the remix. We know when it's Christmas. We know when it's Christmas. We know when it's Christmas.
So there is a very unsubtle message there, isn't there?
Very, very unsubtle. Very unsubtle. Yeah, obviously that song is more about celebrating and kind of taking back control of our narrative. But yeah, I think that the whole Band-Aid conversation is not an easy one because I think it was a great thing at the time that it started, in terms of actually, raising to help, a specific crisis. But the perspective I've been given is that 40 years later, it's good to really look at the how much we just need to review it. And from my perspective as an African, yes, and again, I've expressed my the fact that I appreciate that, the British public came together and made it happen. I love that. And that energy needs to carry on when there's a crisis. But due to the kind of images that was associated with these kind of campaigns, due to the kind of the lyrics that was associated with this, there was lyrics like, there's no peace and joy in Africa this Christmas. And I remember when Bob Geldof called me to be a part of the 2014 version, I said to my flight's already booked to Ghana in December. And this lyric says there's no peace and joy in Africa this Christmas. So it's not true. Is there a way we can change it? So I actually gave him an alternative. And he said, Fuse, I've been doing this for over 30 years and I'm not about to change it now.
So who said that?
Bob Geldof. Said he's been doing it for 30 years, he's not about to change it now. And that was very telling to me because I felt like if you're running a campaign to help Africans, you're directly talking to an African, and I'm offering a solution or a different way to execute things. The lyrics can be changed because the caliber of artists that are on the song, we're all already in the top 10. So we can make a song that can still raise the amount that we need to raise. The images don't need to be so dehumanizing because people, especially at the time was the Ebola crisis, people are already dying. We don't need to be showing dead bodies on TV. And he just said to me that he's been doing it for over 30 years. It's not about to change it now. So what the perspective I've been trying to give is that 40 years later, we need to look at, okay, cool. We've raised money, but for me as an African, it really made me disconnect with my culture and who I was. And I didn't want to be African because it was just associated with death and negative images and famine and war. And I've been trying to make the point that there was a crisis in one place. 1984 was a crisis in Ethiopia, but it branded the whole of Africa, as a place of famine. And I gave the example of Ukraine. There's a war in Ukraine, but we're not saying that the whole of Europe is war, stricken or war torn. So I've been trying to have this kind of dialogue and make people understand from a different perspective of the effects, the negative effects of what it's had on us as Africans on the continent as well. Again, not to disregard the fact that the British public came together to do something amazing. Let's just please look at the effects, because now I have a daughter and I feel like images like ones that Band-Aid have, put out has really affected this, our collective identity and pride, that we need to find another way to execute these things without, belittling the people, without putting them down.
And what did you make of the fact that this became a major story when a white guy made it a major story? I mean, Ed Sheeran.
Yeah.
I mean, your association with Ed Sheeran.
For me, that was a perfect example of how much we can actually all work together to solve an issue or to raise an issue, because I said something to him and he stood with me, and that's how it should be. You know, I said to him, this is an African problem, and there's an African talking about how we can find a solution to this without putting down our collective pride and identity. We can still, you know, raise money without these dehumanizing images. And Ed understood, because I said to him, people would give their £2 a month but would not come to Ghana on holiday, would not come to Kenya on holiday. You know, when the Ebola crisis hit, it hit in Guinea, and people started cancelling their flights to Kenya.
Yeah.
But the distance between Guinea and Kenya is 6,000 kilometers, which is even greater than the width of the whole of Europe. But people were cancelling their flights, and that's how people see Africa as just one
People
place.
see Africa as a country rather than a continent, don't they?
Exactly.
I think that's the news media's fault, I have to say, because it's not just Africa. There is no real news on our main channels other than America and Europe. And if I want any other news, if the best station to watch for knowing about the different countries in Africa and cultures in Africa and regimes and what's going on.
I know what you're going to say.
It's France 24.
Oh, no, that's not what I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say Al Jazeera.
That's the obvious one.
Yeah.
But France, I'm comparing a more similar country. So our next door neighbours, France, have an English service of the national broadcaster, and they, all day long, you're getting reports on different things. I mean, look how little the British public knows about what's been going on in Sudan for the last... or who's causing it, or what's
I will
causing
say,
it.
just to defend ourselves, I did an hour long on Sudan a couple of weeks ago on a Thursday. We had a couple of experts in the studio, did a phone-in, phones went mad, because a lot of people come from that area of the world, and like you say, they don't feel they get represented. And I must admit, look, I knew very little about the, and it is it's a civil war, isn't it, in Sudan. And I felt at the end of that hour, I thought, you know, I really learned something for that. And we should do more of that sort of thing.
There's such a lot going on. I mean, look at all the problems in Nigeria. People think Nigeria, it's wealthy, it's corrupt. But, you know, there's a lot of strife in Nigeria, culture clashes, and, you know, the clash of Christianity and Islam is very stark there. There's horrible things going on. And there's just so... And Zimbabwe, I mean, people are so unaware of Zimbabwe had such a bright future. And it's just got ruined by this megalomaniac nutter, Robert Mugabe, and people have starved. They're starving again now.
Let's go back to the question of the charity
on the
campaigns.
question, Yueh wrote that song.
Yeah.
And he is, I know him, so I know he's just a really genuine nice guy. Now, the lyrics at the time, 40 years ago, were cringy. We used to sit there laughing because it said, "There'll be no snow in Africa this Christmas time," and we'd shout, "Except on the top of Kilimanjaro." You know, but it was just crass. But he wrote it in like 24 hours, and it was so well intentioned. Yeah. But there were no black artists on it. I think there might have been a couple who were, you know, in British London-born pop artists. But when it came to Live Aid, the concert in the summer of '75, that's when it became so obvious that you're trying to promote a crisis in another continent, and you haven't got one band or artist on stage. In other words, let's give him our money. That's great and very laudable. But we're not having him on stage.
I think you have to separate, you know, this is the argument of intention versus impact.
Yeah.
And also, for my generation, second generation of Caribbean people growing up, I know certain African children who felt really impacted by that. And it also, you know, some of them would pretend that they were Caribbean. And actually, some people in the Caribbean community were actually quite disgusting about it. And there's quite division, you know, and, you know, as African kids were growing up, Caribbean people would make fun of African
even though we're all
children.
Because of obviously lack of education.
Exactly. So they would make fun of African people called, I'm not going to say the names, but they would call them certain names. They would laugh at them and say, "Oh, look, you lot starving, you've got flight." So it wasn't just, it was
I got that.
Children can be incredibly cruel.
It can be
did
awful.
secondary school here, and people thought that I was one of those kids, big belly, with, you know, flags around our mouths and everything. So I made it my mission to just tell that different story, tell the truth of what I know of Africa. Because I grew up in Africa, so I grew up in Ghana as well, did primary school in Ghana, and I know how amazing, you know, it was for me. But still, images like, you know, the kids with flags around their mouths and all these negative images still affected me, even though I had seen in myself the truth of how amazing it was. But I still decided that, you know what, I don't want anything to do with that, because that's how people see. If that's how people see me, then I don't want it.
I think if it's been done 40 years ago with such massive success in literally sending food and saving lives at the time to a specific event, then that's good. Okay. I don't like the way it's been recorded every few years.
Yeah, I would just say, like, someone who's got a mixed heritage child, African and Caribbean, I even know what I was called within my community for that. And now I see sort of 30-year-old children of African heritage, the way that they speak, the pride that they have. I love the Afro beats has come through. And it's given people like you, have given people like my child so much pride. And I really thank you for that. And I think it's so important, you know?
Yeah, they need to get the song New African Nation. Let's
not forget, there was really big black artists in Britain then as well.
But they weren't a part of the project, you mean?
No, they weren't included in it, but there were guys, and some of the friends of mine this day, who you know, brilliant musicians. It's not like there were no black...
I'm trying to think of, from that era, the only one I can come up with is Imagination.
The Specials, the whole two-tone movement.
Didn't like them.
The two-tone movement. The two-tone movement.
Right, Linda.
Well, that was about black and white standing shoulder to shoulder.
Linda.
No, I think it was a project at a point in time.
Yeah.
And I think when you look back at something, a lot of things are of their time. And I think the updating of it needs to be an actual update, to be of this time.
Yeah, and allowing Africans to lead that conversation.
And that has to be part of the updating, because I think that is, you know, and what you say about representation and role modeling, we were talking about young people earlier, it's so important. We know that, you know, you aspire to be what you think is possible. And I think this is why we just have to respect what was done, but if you're going to update it, you need to respect this time. And also, you know, it was one famine in one country.
Exactly.
It shouldn't have, you know,
branded the whole continent.
Yeah, exactly.
And then also 40 years later, if we still have to rely on aid and something's not working, it just needs to be, we need to invest in sustainable projects, you know, projects that would allow...
I think China are doing a lot of that.
We need to go to, that's another subject. Yeah. We need to go to a break now. It's 8:49.
LBC. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
10 to 9, Fuse ODG, Ava Vidal, Liz Kershaw and Dr. Linda Yueh with us answering your questions. Chris in Lowestoft says, with the upcoming progression of generative AI and Labour probably allowing AI tech companies freedom to use copyrighted work for free, are you worried for creative industries? I myself am a video games artist and I'm seeing fewer and fewer opportunities. Ava?
Yes, definitely. Writing for the indie and also script writing in areas that I want to go in. These are areas that are being affected quite a lot by AI. And also, we were talking earlier about creative industries and stuff. And people, even within comedy, it's like online and people generating these jokes and stuff. So for all creative industries, I think it's a great worry.
So AI can create jokes?
Yes, it can.
Are they funny ones, though?
Some of them are,
Christmas
actually.
cracker ones, that sort of thing?
More Christmas cracker ones, but they'll get better. They will get better.
Liz?
Last Christmas, we said this new art programme that somebody I know was trying out for work, Write Us a Christmas Song. It was absolutely box-tickingly corny and horrible. Twinkling lights, Snow on the trees, My Baby's Not Coming Home. So there's a lot of work to be done yet, I think. But I think it is worrying. People are trying to protect their own voices, aren't they? Because they can just be copied. So, I think there's some jobs that can never be done.
Hopefully this one.
Yeah.
AI Iain doesn't really work, does it? Linda?
It does not work.
No.
Yes, I think ChatGPT has already, and all the Gen AI, has already scraped all the data on the internet. So what we're talking about
It does give a lot of wrong answers, though.
It does. It's assimilating that data, which is the hard thing. You know how it is. You get inundated with data. It's how you actually you improve it, you use it. So this is really about going forward. So your copyrighted work has already been incorporated into Gen AI at this point. And I think, the next phase of this, I think, does need to be carefully thought about, because for a lot of people in the creative industries, and for writers, maybe, somebody who writes books, you'd like to think that the same copyright protection that you have as a creator of content should be respected regardless of the digital medium.
Fuse, how do you think this might affect you? Because I remember not that long ago, I tried to get an AI, whatever they're called, to do a new ABBA song, and it was terrible. It sounded nothing like them. But are you worried that you could become a sort of AI robot in some way?
There is a sense of worry there for creatives, because being a creative is actually a spiritual thing. Like, you actually have to tap into a different energy in order to actually come up with a song or come up with a poem, or even if it's comedy, come up with your material. So AI has kind of taken that energy that we've tapped into and is kind of making more technical with, how it's producing the results. But definitely, we need to protect creatives, because they are the heart and soul of the world.
And that is, the creative sector in this country is one of our greatest exports, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And we may not be able to do many things, but we are brilliant on the creative side, brilliant on the sporting side, and we need to, whatever regulations come in. But the problem is that legislation is always 10 years behind the technology, isn't it?
It is. It's way behind, and AI is moving fast. But I think the government can, also try and move fast and evolve with the times, because it's moving so fast that, yesterday, AI couldn't be Fuse ODG. Today, they can. They can even be an evolved version. Do you know what I mean? But there just needs to be something in place to protect our intellectual property, something in place to protect us. But again, I don't want to be one of those people that, oh my gosh, they're coming to take our jobs. We also need to learn what's happening right now.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Because, of course, when you and I were growing up, Liz, in the late 70s, early 80s, computerisation was said to be, that's going to lose so many jobs.
Exactly.
And it did.
Killed the radio star.
Exactly. But it created a huge number of jobs too. So sometimes these things can be an opportunity as well as a threat.
Yeah.
Great economic point. That's a lump of labour fallacy. What you just described, the lump of labour fallacy.
Is it? Okay.
Every time you have a technological change, people think, of course, some people lose their jobs. But history tells us you have new jobs, you have other jobs.
It creates other opportunities.
And Gen AI can be augmenting. It can augment, but that's a point about learning to use it.
I'd like to see a government for once that took creative industry seriously and didn't treat it like silly pop music. They don't appreciate the soft power of it. They don't appreciate the revenue earning potential of it, and they just don't put into
And
it.
I remember I had to make a point of this actually to the Ghana tourism, because I was saying to them, people are coming to Ghana because of the music, because of Afrobeats. So they actually they understood the power of music and actually partnered with a lot of us artists to create this initiative called the Year of Return.
That phrase you just used, Afrobeats, I mean, that's kind of falling into African music, it's one generic thing. South African music is very different from Ghanaian music.
But that's you want to start a whole different war here, like, because you are
I just want to mention Mango Groove.
But you are right, Afrobeats is so diverse. You know, but again, we're all just trying to find a way to kind of communicate it to the world. But in Ghana, there's so many different types of Afrobeats. In Nigeria, so many different types. South Africa, so many different genres under African music. But yeah, I made the point that we were able to generate 1.9 billion for the Ghana economy due to the fact that Afrobeats music was just popping everywhere and people wanted to find out where this was from. And as a result, the tourism board were giving out 45,000 visas before the Year of Return, the initiative that allows people to come and enjoy themselves in Ghana. And during the Year of Return, they gave out 950,000 visas. And that's all because of the Afrobeats movement, this self-love revolution that we kind of sparked amongst Africans, and people feeling like, oh my gosh, I want to know where this music is from. Same way you went and downloaded all my songs. You know, when I first met Ed, he was like, I love your music, I love Afrobeats. And I said to him, then come to Ghana. And he booked his ticket a few months later and ended up in Ghana. So you might end up in Ghana with you.
I'd love to. I've only ever been to one African country. Isn't that disgraceful? Rwanda, and I wasn't even sent there by the government. Right. Our fun question is from Jen in Manchester. Which celebrity would you most like to have join your family for Christmas dinner next week? Ava.
If the politicians count, then I'd say David Lammy.
Really?
Yes. We wouldn't feed him anything and nobody would talk to him.
Ask him some general knowledge questions. That'll be a lot.
Well, that's not very nice. You have to be nice to all, even politicians. You have to be nice to on Christmas Day.
No, you don't. I think we just bring him there just so we can ignore him.
Well, you're not full of the Christmas spirit,
I am.
Liz?
Well, kind of political figure. I'd love to.
Doesn't have to be political.
No, I've got to. If it were, it would be Elon Musk, because I think he'd just be fiercely fascinating and intelligent. He's got a big view of the world, and I'd just like to meet him. And the person celebrity I'd really like to join me for Christmas dinner, I can't name because his wife might be listening.
Oh, wow.
Well, you wanted something, fruity.
Well, I don't know whether to go further with that or not. Do a Michael Howard.
You won't get anywhere.
No, let's not. Okay, Linda, top that.
Yeah, I don't think I can.
Wow.
Can I please have Monica Galetti?
Say Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah.
Who's Monica Galetti?
So she's a chef, and she hosts MasterChef, the professionals.
Oh, so you don't want to cook the dinner yourself?
Oh, thank you, Ian. That's exactly where I was going with that. And I got to go to Samoa, where she's from, and the food is amazing. That'd be bliss.
Okay.
This professional chef came, cooked the dinner, told me about her country. Monica, if you're listening, please can you come?
She got a husband that maybe Liz
Her husband's a sommelier, so that's even...
Fuse.
I want to get Ian over for Christmas. Yeah, I want to get Ian over.
Yeah, but I'm not a celebrity.
You know why? Because you're a celebrity to me, though. Celebrity is perspective, and I'm saying you're a celebrity.
It's free from 1 o'clock, so you can have it on the table.
I was about to say, they got Ian working on Christmas Day, guys. That's how hard he's working for you guys. I'll get you over so you can show some of your dance moves.
Oh, God, you really would regret that. And what happens on Christmas Day in Ghana?
Oh, my God. It's noisy everywhere. You know, whereas in this country, everything is shut, everything is open in Ghana.
And is it summer?
It's the hottest.
Yeah,
It's the hottest.
And so what's the Christmas dinner in Ghana?
Christmas dinner.
Typical one.
It's actually it's not turkey.
No.
Because I think turkey gets quite dry at Christmas. I feel like it's overrated.
I never have turkey. I think it's rubbish.
Dry most places. Especially when I make it.
We could continue this discussion about turkey, but we've already gone over our time. I want to thank you all for coming on the programme. I want to thank everybody who's been on Cross Question this year. I think 2024 has been a brilliant year. Corey books all the guests. He's done a fantastic job, particularly booking this panel. What a Christmas panel we've had. And Fuse, I know you were a bit nervous about being put on the spot on politics, but have you enjoyed it?
No, I had a great time. You know what it is, It's because I'm a very real person. So if you ask me a question, I will be very real about it. And I feel like certain subjects we're not ready to discuss on this day, the last day of the Christmas show. So definitely I was thinking,
we'll do that next time. I'll tell you what, come back on when your new album's coming out in March.
In March, yeah.
And then you can give all your political views.
So we've got 2 appointments, the album one, then we've got the app, Sonar, School of New Africa.
Oh.
Yeah.
And him
I've read about that. I've read about that.
The education app. The education app.
Amazing.
Right. We are going to move on in the next hour. Much as I'd love to continue this panel for the next hour, we're going to be talking about, wait for it, school uniforms, because the government has decided that it wants to make school uniforms cheaper, and the way they've come up with doing that is to say that schools can only mandate 3 items of school uniform. Now, to me, this sounds an absolutely crackers idea, because I have a much simpler idea to make school uniforms cheaper: abolish them. Discuss 0345 6060 973. That's the number to call here on LBC.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, the Prime Minister has spoken with the US President-elect Donald Trump during a phone call. Downing Street says Keir Starmer again spoke about the need for allies to support Ukraine. LBC's